Good evening, everyone. You might notice the faces are a bit different tonight. My name is James Crawford, and I'm one of the producers behind the scenes
Greetings.
with the show. Here with
Hey, greetings. I'm Joey. I'm with the show here too. I also help produce.
tonight. We're going to be doing something a little different as we are getting into some more of the science-based topics, and things become a little maybe more challenging. We thought it would be a good time to recap the intro to the home study course, and also remind everyone that at any time you can go back and rewatch any of the prior lessons and units. We're on unit 6 now, so we've been at this getting close to, well, right at a year. Before we began the show, we practiced for months. So tonight, if you want to join us, we'll be here in the comments section answering as many of your questions as we can. But tonight will not be a full live session. It is a recap of the intro to the home study course. We will be back next week with more of unit 6 with the full cast and team. So sit back and we'll go ahead and begin the show.
All right, welcome to Awaken Your Inner Genius. We are thrilled to have you all with us here today. We have so much to share with you, but we wanted to start with a quote which is going to guide the very pathway that we have moving forward. If you would, take a look. It's one of my favorite quotes from Walter Russell: "Mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed." So if you would, please, before I introduce our whole panel of Russell students, I would like you to please just close your eyes and just relax into the moment. And if you would, breathe in deeply with me. And as you breathe out, I'd like you to become very centered, very centered. And as you breathe in, I'd like you to relax your shoulders and your neck and just become very grounded into the moment we are here, tuning in to the universal heartbeat of all things. And breathe out. And one more time, breathe in. And just relax into the joy of today, inviting balance into your life, inviting love and light, and know that you're exactly where you need to be. Feel free to open your eyes, and I want to introduce everyone to our panel. Now, I want to start with a number because this is going to be what's really, really powerful here. 191. What does that represent? It represents the number of years that the folks you see on the screen, including one of our additional folks that's trying to get on right now, what it represents as it relates to how many years that the Russell students here have been studying. So before we go into each of our individual stories, I'm going to ask each person on our broadcast simply to say a quick hello to everyone, and actually just briefly introduce themselves, because after I have everybody introduced, I'm going to be coming to you asking your story about how your paths have crossed with the Russell method. So why don't we begin with Ken Pearson?
Yes, my name is Ken Pearson. I have been involved with this message for 29, going on my 30th year, and it has changed my life and elevated me to a level of intelligence I just didn't think was possible in my family tree. But I realized, and I've been taught, that we all have the same amount of brilliance. It's just about awakening it. And that's what this whole course is about.
All right. Thank you so much, Ken. And let's go on to John Bonsall.
Hello, everyone. John Bonsall here, 50-year student of the University of Science and Philosophy, former president. And it's going to be wonderful to spend time with you this evening on this broadcast. And hopefully we will bring you some enlightened subject matter that we all can enjoy and share. So let's get going.
All right, wonderful. And then we have Jackie and Jim Porter.
Hi, guys.
Well, you can go first.
Hello, I'm also a 50-year student at the University of Science and Philosophy. And Jacqueline?
I am maybe 45 because I was introduced to the home study course and all the other material and gave to Leo Russell through Jim, who spent time with Leo along with John back in the 70s. And it's very exciting to be here to talk to some people that I talked to online. Darcy, I see you and welcome. And I think Jim has a little bit to say, right?
All right, well, we do. We have a lot more to say, but we have a whole hour and a half to get through it. And so we have one more person that will be joining us. It's Karen Elkins, editor of Science to Sage magazine. We had a minor technical glitch, but she is working to jump back in with us as well. So as you take a look at everybody here on the screen, I'm Kimberly Faith. I am a relatively new student. Out of everybody that'll be on the screen, I'm the newest one, and probably comes with a great deal of passion and excitement for being the newest one. I would like to ask James Crawford to introduce himself right quick. He and I have worked together for a number of years, and he is going to be the producer, the technical producer for our Awaken Your Inner Genius series.
Hi, everyone. I am a 2-year Russell student, and I am here to learn more and try to make this whole process go smoothly.
All right, we are glad to have you. So here's the thing: is that today we're actually celebrating a birthday. Before we get into our bios, what birthday are we celebrating, John?
We're celebrating Dr. Walter Russell's birthday.
And I believe he would have been 153 today had he still been with us. So it seemed fitting to be able to launch this particular broadcast of this time. And the whole issue of Dr. Walter and Leo Russell is really quite timely because we had some unexpected interest. And so I'm going to ask if James would, before we start our detailed introductions, I'm going to ask James just to show a clip of Terrence Howard, an actor who was on the Joe Rogan show just this weekend. There's been 1.5 million views, and I'm asking him just to show a clip because he actually mentioned Walter Russell.
Doesn't John Keely's work remind you a lot of Walter Russell? And a bell went on. And so I got in touch with the University of Science and Philosophy after watching some stuff about Walter Russell. And Michael Hudak, took me under his wing and started talking to me, but he was more into the philosophy and the love that Walter was talking about. But my intention was to rebuild the periodic table, build a new periodic table, because the stuff I had learned in college, I went to school for chemical engineering the first year over at Pratt. And they, at the time, I think it was like 108 elements. And I told the teacher, the professor, about the relationship between hydrogen on the spectrometer and carbon and silicon and cobalt. And it was like, it's the same exact color, same tone, just doubled in each octave. And he was like, no, each element is the same element and it will always be that element. And I was like, you don't see the relationship. So I left school and I was going to spend 40 years rebuilding the periodic table. And I found out that Walter Russell had already did that.
Perfect.
And he did it based upon the natural curvature of everything.
Showing that clip. So what's so intriguing and what I want to share with the group is that what you're about to experience here, we're going to officially start teaching the home study course on Sunday, June 2nd. We'll share with you more about that. But this has been in the works for 4 months. The group that you see on the screen, we have been diligently working on preparing ourselves and giving this gift of love for the Awaken Your Inner Genius project. So I want to, in just a moment, I'm going to share with you why we're doing the project. But first, I want to ask each one of them to please share, take just about 5 minutes to share how their lives intersected with the Walter and Leo Russell work. And I believe I'm going to go in order here because who was first? I believe Jim was the first one to cross paths with the work. Is that a fair enough statement?
Yes.
All right. So, Jim, let's just start with you. How did you cross paths? And then we'll go to John because I know the two of your paths were closely intertwined.
I was close to a family from childhood that lived in Newark, Delaware. And I went to a little farmette outside of Newark, Delaware to visit them when I was in my early 20s, 22, 23. And when I got there, the daughter who I knew and the wife were out riding horses. I went in the house and sat at the table and looked down, and there was the first unit of the home study course on Universal Law, Natural Science, and Living Philosophy. So while waiting for them, I read it. I found it intriguing because it was answering things that I had known because of a short-term near-death experience I had when I was 5. I had known was right, but I never found it anywhere else. So once I started reading that material, that interested me. I did leave that day, did not ask anything more about it, and I came back to visit them several months later, and the same book was still on the same table. So I picked it up and read it again, and that time it hooked me, and I've been hooked ever since.
Okay, and I do believe that you are the one that actually handed, so what he's referring to, we'll share with you about the home study course. It was one simple unit. So he had this one document, Unit 1, and he hands it over to John Bonsall. John, do I have that right?
You do. In the summer of 1975, I was lifeguarding in Newark, Delaware, and my cousin Jim happened to swing by towards the evening hours and visit, and I noticed he was carrying this booklet, this pamphlet, and anyway, I asked him what it was, and so he was kind enough to hand it to me, and he said, well, listen, I got to head off to class, and he did, so he left that unit with me, and must have spent maybe 5, 10 minutes being particular, but it was a moment. Anyway, like all my kids, I didn't have you child you had. I in this material.
All right, so I'm having just want to check in with James here. I was having a little bit of trouble hearing John. Was it just me?
No,
That was all of us.
Okay, so I think maybe just the internet's moving a little bit slow there. So perhaps he'll be able to hardwire it or just simply bring the internet a little closer to the laptop. So we'll come back to John in just a moment. But Jim, if you would just share a little bit. So John was saying that you handing him the home study course actually hooked him. And then you and John found your way actually to working at Swannanoa. And for those of you that don't know what Swannanoa is, I'm going to ask James right quick, Jim, before you talk, James, just to show a quick picture, because people need to understand that this was an incredible palace, really, at the top of a mountain here in Virginia. And so there you are, both of you in your 20s, and you go up to this lovely historical place. And then what happens, Jim?
Well, I had been there a couple of times before. The group that I studied with, which was the First Age of Character Club, chartered by Leo Russell. I'm getting feedback from somewhere.
All right, we're covered.
Go ahead.
So the our group, the First Age of Character Club, chartered by Leo Russell, would go down and help clean up around the palace, the grounds and stuff. And so I was aware of where it was and aware of her, although I had not met her. Then John and I, when we got an apartment together back in the 70s when he got out of college. And
back in the 70s, that's just a wee bit of time ago, Jim.
It was a while back.
A little more seasoned than most, but I love this story. Keep going.
But I mentioned to him one day that I was going to head down to Swannanoa just to look at it and would he like to go along, and he said he would, and he and I drove down together, and when we got there we walked about, we took the tour given by Angela at that time, Leo's personal aide, and after the tour we were walking in the gardens, and we were about to leave, and Leo came back from her walk with her dog Jimmy and saw us leaving and told Angela to immediately go out and tell us to come back. And so we went back and sat with her and talked with her, and she asked if we would like to come down there and help her on a long-term basis. And we were both in our 20s and not attached to anything, and sure, why not? So we agreed to come down, and we spent a little over a couple of years there.
Okay, so let's see if we can hear from John again. John, can we try you again?
Right.
Okay, so if you would, how old were you when you started working with Leo?
21.
All right, so we're having a little bit of a glitch there. So, John, I'm going to give you just a moment. Perhaps if we can have you reboot and come in, maybe that'll help with the internet issue. But in the meantime, we have Karen. So, Karen, if you would come off mute, I briefly referred to you, but I want you to give us just a quick introduction of yourself.
I'm Karen Elkins. I'm editor and designer researcher for Science to Sage magazine. And I came through the work of Walter Russell, my friend who said, if you read one book, read the universal one, which I did. And when I read it, I got tears in my eyes. And I kind of knew in my heart that it was where I needed to take my next journey to. So that's my intro to myself. And
okay, we will have a lot more to say about that. I want to go back to then. We have Jim and John that have been working there for Leo, and then Jackie comes into the story. So Jackie, how did that happen?
Well, I met Jim through some other class that we were attending. And every time he spoke, contrary to what this other person was saying, he was making so much sense. So I started questioning him after class, and I'm thinking, how does he know this stuff? Where are you getting this information? How are you doing this? And so he told me all about his experience with Leo, and he told me about the home study course. Of course, then when we got together, I kind of took over his home study course and started just reading at work breaks, reading on lunch breaks, and he did take me down to meet her. Actually, before I started reading the books, he took me to introduce her to me to her. She was coming up out of the basement on the outside, and I was very shy and didn't know what an illuminant was, didn't really know who she was. But she looked at me and she asked, haven't we met somewhere before? And of course, we have, but I had no idea. I didn't know what to answer or anything. It was like, I guess so, you know. But the familiar, she recognized me somehow, and that has stuck with me through all these years. And
Interesting. Well, let me just have James show a picture right quick, Jackie. So we're going to share with you all about Walter and Leo Russell. And then our session next week, we're going to go into a lot more detail about their story. But I did want you to see a picture of Leo Russell. And so James is going to show that to everybody right quick, because I want you all to see. This was her on one of her radio shows when she was being interviewed to actually share more of her work. And so we're going to share a lot more about that to start with. But I want to see if we can have John come on. This is when John also knew Leo. And John, let's try it again for you.
All right, very good. So anyway, I arrived at Swannanoa Palace January 10th, 1976. And I was thinking right before the broadcast, I believe there's only 3 of us left that actually stayed and resided at the palace with Leo Russell. Myself, Jim Porter, and Margaret Rue.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm hoping that I can share, you know, my history with Leo and all the jewels and the gems that she shared with us, with everybody. But yeah, what a wonderful experience. And the lessons, the guidance that Leo gave me, and I don't speak for Jim, but has carried me this lifetime. And eventually, you know, becoming president of this university was a wonderful thing. And I was mentioning to you guys earlier, it was wonderful for me to be able to do some restoration of some of Walter Russell's sculpting and using his own. Was an incredible. Like I know.
Okay, so all right, so we're still having a little bit of a lag, John, but we're going to work on that. So
I don't think it's John, my dear. I think it's we have to make sure that we don't talk while someone else is talking, because those mics are open.
So let's go ahead to you then, Ken, since we're live. What is your story and how you crossed paths with the Russell message?
Well, my God, I come from a pretty hard background, streets, LA. I was institutionalized at a very young age, awarded the courts at 12. So I had a really, unfortunately, pretty tough childhood, lived on the streets for a while. And then as I became an adult, I had some issues with drugs and alcohol, and I got sober, and I dedicated myself in sobriety to making a change and wanting to go further in life and to get rid of this lack of self-esteem, lack of belief in who I am or what I'm capable of. I had no idea what my purpose was. I felt, there was grandiose part of me that felt like I was so capable, yet I wasn't accomplishing as much. So I really started studying. I spent about 4 years really studying recovery and getting that philosophy paradigm down. And I ended up in a spiritual store with spiritual books. And in one of the bookcases was all these books by Glenn Clark. Of all these great famous people, and the premise of it was back then was to find the greatest minds. This is right around World War I. To find the greatest minds in the world, to find a world solution for mankind, because the Renaissance period had long since passed, as we will talk more about. And when I read that about bettering mankind, and man, for me, I wanted to learn as much as I could from the greatest minds that were out there. And then there was this book called The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. And I encourage anybody who's listening live, if you have not read that book, it is a great on-ramp to your potential, my potential, all of our potentials. And it's a literal roadmap. That little book, it's 70 pages. And when I got it, I read it right there on the spot. I couldn't put it down. I bought it, of course, and I proceeded to read it multiple times a day for the next 6 weeks. And I engaged in meditation on it. And I had this most amazing awakening. I won't go too much into that on down the line, but something woke up inside of me, deep inside of me. And it is exactly what is described. And it was the genius light had come on, and it was inspired by their works, by the life experience of Walter Russell at that point. I hadn't heard about Leo, but I did hear about Walter. And after having that experience, I wanted more. And in that book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, there's some speaking and some reference to the Divine Iliad and some of the other works that were going to come out in terms of Walter's life, and that he was waiting to produce them, that God had told him to wait because mankind wasn't ready. And it's still, it's interesting because this journey, when you say 150 years, 53 years, it really blows my mind. 51 years. It's amazing to think that now mankind is ready for this message. And what we're attempting to do is something that was so important to me that I didn't get. I had to go through the school of hard knocks, read, study, read again. And I encourage all those that would embrace the home study course to do that. But at the same time, for me, what we're doing is breaking down the application, how to take this knowledge and bring it into your life today, right now, for where you're at, and start that awakening process. So that's
we will be talking a lot more about that. And so I also want to just jump on, because as I mentioned to you, I was one of the newer ones. And so my story intersects with John Bonsall. So there I am in the summer of 2021. I go to a place in Waynesboro, Virginia, and someone suggests while I was there, why don't I go check out this museum called the Russell Museum. I've never heard about any of this work before. I walk in, and I want to show you a glimpse of what I saw. James will pull up on the screen there a glimpse of what I saw when I walked into this museum, because I don't believe that I can actually describe it. And so when I walked in, there I see these sculptures and these paintings and a scientific room with some drawings from Dr. Walter. And I remember just being blown away that there was this tiny little museum here in this tiny town of Waynesboro, Virginia. And so at the time I walked in, it was very, very quiet. I find my way through the museum. I lay my $20 there on the counter, and I walk in. And there I am standing in the science room, and then this very, very charming gentleman who was almost like a step out of the 1920s in his three-piece suit welcomes me into the fold. And so, John, this is where I'm going to ask you to come on board. So John walks up to me, and I am standing beside a poster, a drawing from Walter Russell. And the drawing was God is Light. And what was fascinating to me, as someone who had really kind of searched for meaning at the time, it was a tough time in my life. I was trying to find a place again, but I was standing beside this drawing when John walked up to me. He may not even remember this, but I wanted you to see this drawing right quick, because I remember the dawning for me that when you see this drawing, it was at the beginning of the science room. And if you'll notice on the bottom left-hand side, you see the levels of light that are connecting people. Well, this was something that I had seen my entire life. I had seen this ever since I was a little girl. And so I wanted to go back to that moment as a little girl for a moment, because I want to show you a picture of myself when I was 10 years old. So there I was, 2 hearing aids taped to my head, Coke bottle, glasses, very, very awkward, very difficult. I'm glad you're enjoying that. So there I was. Now this is relevant to the story, my dear friends. There I was in a very awkward stage as a child. I could hardly even run without having my hearing aids fall out or my glasses fall off, okay? So from very early in life, I had to find other ways to tune in to whatever the world was going on in the world. And so I developed an intuitive understanding that there was something much greater than what we were being taught. And I had to begin to listen to what people didn't say. Well, that turned me into having a greater intuitive understanding that I could actually see those lights between people. So imagine my shock when I'm standing there. I'm luckily looking a lot different than that. Okay, let's put the picture away, James. I think I showed enough of that one. But there I am standing by this particular illustration, and John walks up to me. And John, I thought it would be fun to share with the group just a little bit about what that first day together was like, because it was because of you that I walked out with the home study course.
Well, you know, we welcome everyone there at the time at the museum. They still do. And for me, I love people, and to have someone come in that is already enlightened and seeking higher truths and greater understanding. We just had a wonderful, from the beginning, we're receptive and open to the, to the artwork and the science and so on. And I tried to be careful not to overwhelm you, but you took it in stride. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience to meet someone that has the light within, and then you can grow from that. So, and here we are 2.5, 3 years later, and now we're presenting what you saw to the world. So it's a wonderful 360.
Well, and so I want to talk about the intersection with everybody that's on the screen, because what's important for all of you that are listening here to this very first broadcast, we're going to officially start with Unit 1 on Sunday, June 2nd, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Time, whatever works for you. And we want you to understand the people who are here on the screen. So we have John, who's a 50-year student, Jim, a 50-year student, Jackie, a 45-year student. We have Karen as a 13-year student. We have Ken, who's a 30-year student. And then we have me and James. But much like I'm a little girl, I was so excited to find these higher truths, because I always knew there had to be something greater. The number one question that we hear from others is, why haven't I ever heard of the Russells, right? And so all of a sudden, so John and I start talking to John, I start doing some work at the museum, and then John and Karen, you two had been talking, and somehow that path came together. Can you talk a little bit about why the Science and Sage magazine led to conversations with John? Karen, can you chime in?
Yeah, because my curiosity when I do the magazine, and my question as a kid is, how does God create? And as my very beginning on this journey, getting into this kind of stuff was, again, with the Universal One. And as I said, I got tears in my eyes. So I was looking at the book about The Secret of Light, and I thought, can I take excerpts of it? Can I make a magazine out of it that would be simpler for people to understand, and kind of put it in the context of the Dandy Pub principle? Because I always think there's always that seed And then we're all part of that light. We're all part of the light of the one. And so I asked John if I could use the metaphor and let me play, and he could change anything he wanted. So that's how John and I kind of got to be in touch. And he said, Karen, have at it. So I got to go play. And John was like very happy with the magazine, because I mean, I always, every time I go for a walk, it's the dandy pup. I go, there's God right there. It's everywhere. So anyway, go ahead, John. You have a thought?
Man, I'm looking at that picture, and to be associated with the Russells and Tesla on the same page, I'm honored. Well, in that story, in that first communication with Karen, you know, as president, I had to be careful as to who, you know, we allow to do things with the material. And so I only asked one thing of Karen, was to save a page for us and to show the home study course in her booklet, and she did so beautifully, and it's carried on, and here we are today. Wonderful
Here
story.
we are today. What a lovely. So there's so much more to this. There's so much more to our stories here. So I'm going to be asking some of us some questions to bring this out, because I'm convinced that life is like a cosmic connect the dot game. There is some larger story that has happened for us all to be here on the same page. And so John and Jim, you were part of, you know, once Leo refolded and the museum, the university closed down at Swannanoa, everything was in storage for 20 years. And you two were also part of the reopening of the museum in Waynesboro. Do I have that correct?
And Jackie.
Yes,
And Jackie.
yes, but that was all started by impetus from Jackie.
Wonderful. Well, and so Jackie, what was part of your inspired story about why you wanted to see the museum opened again?
Well, it was something we all collectively wanted to see, because we didn't like the fact that it was dismantled and all the works being stored, but getting dust and damp, and
Sure.
it needed to be shown. So I got in touch with someone online through the Facebook group and started up a chat. And this person was very interested in everything I had to say. I told him the whole history, kind of grooming with this information, and ended up inviting them to a One Heart meeting, which is another thing, but it was out at Swannanoa, and this was Matt Presti.
Okay.
So he and his wife, we came and we rented an Airbnb and next to John's house, actually. Invited John over, and we all just kind of got to know each other and had a really good time.
And so you're showing the power of just how you take an idea and actually bring it to life. And so we're going to be sharing a lot more about how all of that happened. But I love that, Jackie, that you had that love, and we're kind of doing what you could to be able to bring things along. We're going to talk a lot more about that. In the chat box, we do have Darcy says, has anyone on the panel had a spiritual experience that was undefinable until the discovery of the works? In particular, severance from the seat of sensation. Oh boy, Darcy, you've opened up the gates to that. We are totally coming to that, because several of these folks have, but I do want to finish right quick about how Ken came into the story a year ago, re-entered the story, and then you all please be thinking about how we want to answer that question. So Ken, it was a year ago this weekend that you end up reaching out to the USP, and that set a whole series of dominoes into motion. How did you re-enter the story?
Well, it was definitely a divine act of providence for sure. As I look back, I didn't know at the time. I don't think that's the key to living the good life is, you know, by the time you recognize that these good, amazing things are happening, they're already happening because you built them into your life. And that's a building process. But for me, when I was inspired, I came out to Virginia in '98. That was 3 years after I discovered the Manic Tap, the Secrets of the Universe. And I had bought all the literature in that first year too. I found the University of Science and Philosophy had been named, it used to be named the Walter Russell Foundation. So that's what I was looking for. So it took me a little bit. But in my readings and in my inspiration, and I really had quite a solo journey in this message. So which was beautiful because I feel as though I was literally instructed by Walter and Lael and God, as you know, for my life. And so I always just immediately had this idea. I come from the movie industry background, and I just felt like this needs to be a movie. This is a Wonderful Life meets The Matrix with the trans elimination and rewriting the periodic table of elements. And it's funny when I hear someone say, yeah, I wanted to rewrite them. And it's like, he'd already done it. Like, and I'm like, this guy, you got to remember something. This man, Walter Russell, is science information. He had no fundamental education. This all came from divine providence. So that was so inspiring to me. I just believe that it would be an amazing movie, and that's still my goal. I wish to do a movie on their lives, and I believe the world will be inspired by that movie.
All right, I love that. And so that's how he ends up coming to Virginia. He meets John, he meets me, he meets Jim, he meets Jackie, and the next thing you know, we set in motion a series of things. So you'll notice that we have Jackie and Jim. How long have the two of you been married?
45 years today.
Oh, wow. Happy anniversary. What a lovely time. And so we will share with you a little bit more how Ken and my experience also was fascinating. And
wait a minute. I'm sorry. I just had to get this right. So your guys' anniversary is on Walter Russell's birthday?
We married on his birthday.
It was planned.
Saturday. I love that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that just shows you the impact that they had on your lives. That's very powerful. That's very powerful.
It was a date to remember.
Oh, I love that. Well, so then when Ken came to Virginia, it set in series a whole motion of things, and Ken and I will be sharing with you about our budding romance over time. So we now are kind of birthing new creations here together, and which brings me to why we're actually doing this Awaken Your Inner Genius project. And so I'm going to ask everybody to comment on this, but I'd like to begin. What happened late last year is part of when people first learn about the Russell work, sometimes it can be overwhelming. You're not sure where there's a start point. And I was really passionate about the home study course and also about the man who tapped the secrets of the universe. And so as Ken and I were talking about this, I had this personal vision that birthed, and it was that I had a personal goal of placing the man who tapped in the hands of 1 million people. Now, why is that? Because from so many people that learned about the Russell work, they often say that this was an on-ramp. It's a tiny little book. It's very inspirational. It's about a life well lived. And most people then say, wow, I want to know more. So as we moved forward, by the fall, I was trying to find my joy around the work and how we could bring more to more people and not make it overwhelming for people, to instead go on a journey of the heart, and bring a great deal of love. So I reach out to the core team you see here on the screen. And so I reach out to John. I had such a respect for those of you that you see on the screen now. I said, John, you have 50 years of knowledge. Jim, you have 50 years. I wanted to see everybody on the screen right quick. As I was looking at all of you and I came to you and said, hey, what do you think about this project? Why did you say yes to spending your time practicing, getting us to this point of going live, knowing that we want to bring this to people? Who wants to jump in first?
I'll jump in first.
Okay, John, and then I'll go to Karen.
Well, if you remember correctly, I said, no, I don't want to do it. Because I was retired, and I didn't want to have to go, put all this effort in. But I knew that your heart was in it and your enthusiasm as a new student, and I didn't want to discourage that whatsoever. And but it's important. It's important for the world to hear about the Russells, and you can hear it from all these different students that have a direct connection to the university. And so it's going to be a wonderful thing for our audience to hear some of the stories and the background and the knowledge that we can share with everyone.
Well,
and if I may, just one quick one. On Ken's original visit to Virginia and him coming into the museum, it was so paramount because here he had read the home study course and the Russell books, and he had read and studied for 28 years.
but he was able to walk through those front doors, and in just one moment, he saw the embodiment of the entire message through all the sculpting and the paintings and the scientific drawings. And it was just a wonderful thing to see that look on Ken's face. So I just wanted to add that.
I love that. I love that. So, Ken, we'll go to you in just a moment. But Karen, you said you would chime in. Why did you say yes to this project?
Because I know it'll take me deeper, and being in, especially in the group that where I am right now, it'll take it to a new level. So I know a conversation, there's always those aha moments you get when you share with people who know. So thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you. And Darcy, I promise we'll be getting to some of those things about spiritual experiences. Do know that our intention is to share some of that along the way as we do share this home study course. Jim and Jackie, why did you say yes to this Awaken Your Inner Genius?
Oh, I'm always saying yes when it comes to this message. I really feel that was one of my missions when I came here, is to protect it and make sure it stays as it was written by the authors.
Okay. Jim, why did you say yes?
I said yes because when I was early in the message, back in my still in my 20s, along with the other books that I read The Divine Iliad by Walter Russell, which is a written record of his illumination for 39 days and nights. And in that, he was instructed by God when he questioned God as to how he was to get this message out to humanity. That's such a large job for an individual. He was told, just share it or give it to 10 who will share it and give it to 10. And this message will rise up as a wall of granite beneath your feet and sweep the world. So that's the premise that I began to work on back then. My entire life is dedicated from my 20s until I'm no longer on planet to each day trying to share this knowledge of this message with my fellow human beings, because I literally and truly believe with all my heart and being, it is the pathway to light and enlightenment and discovery of who we truly are. And it will be the salvation of humanity.
Wow. Very powerful words. I love that. And so, Ken, why did you say yes to the Awaken Your Inner Genius initiative?
Yeah, I have been fortunate to be lecturing for quite a number of years, I'd say about 28 now, on a way of life. And I was able to incorporate this message into the lecturing that I was doing. And, you know, it's not that it's a complex message, because quite frankly, it is simplified to this man's able to explain creation on the basis of a seesaw. So it is not complex like one might think. But I also know that when I first learned and I was coming up, I had so much garbage in my head. I needed someone to guide me on how to apply this to this garbage and get rid of this garbage and bring in this new knowledge so that I could live in it, so I could breathe in it. It's not something you just do in the morning, something you do at night. It's a living philosophy. And so I just know the importance of breaking it down and showing people the application and how important that is, because why reinvent the wheel, right? You've got people with a lot of years that have gone through a lot of, we've all suffered loss. We've had health issues. We've walked through financial stuff. I can't speak for everyone, but, those trials and tribulations in this world, this 3D world, that can really oppress you and make you wonder if you've done something wrong, you're not doing something right. Is it all about money? Is it not about money? But it seems like money gives you freedom. All these questions that circulate and just get stronger and stronger until you learn how to find a way of life that quiets that inner dialogue inside, and you start to be at peace, and quieting the mind down by inviting in that which is inside me to awaken, right? I didn't realize I know around and people talk about God being on some tile on the ceiling, but this philosophy is all about God within and awakening it, and that like the first sign you posted, that mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed. That I could be a genius, and everyone on here, you need to know you can be a genius. It's not can, you are. It's a question of whether you want to awaken it or not. And these are the locking bars. This home study course is the locking bars that awaken my genius And to this day, I want to carry it. And I love life. I exude love. There's no question. I exude love in my life.
So that is why you said yes to the project.
Yep.
Okay. Well, and I want to mention to everybody part of, I've been volunteering with the University of Science and Philosophy for 3 years. And for the time that I was working with John for the first year and a half there, he watched as I lived in South Carolina. I would drive 6 hours every month, and I would come up there and I would stay a week, do what I could to help, and then I would drive back. And so this went on for quite some time. And then I finally just recently moved up here to Virginia. And literally, I was in love. I fell in love with the art. I fell in love with the story. I fell in love with the way that Walter Russell didn't even start sculpting until he was older than I was. And I figured, well, if he could do it, there was still hope for me that perhaps my best part of life could be after that. And so I walked in there actually very brokenhearted. I'll be honest with you. I was going through a tough time in life. I had lost my way. I was a recovered Southern Baptist wife. At the time, I had had some family issues that had really made me question hope for humanity. And so I wanted to open it up and ask everybody if they would answer this. Part of what so inspired me about John is that he was so excited about the work and so excited to give hope to humanity. And that all of these volunteers, these were all volunteers that were helping to bring this to the world. And so I'm going to ask each one of you, why is it that you think this can bring hope to humanity? Because I want to articulate to everybody that we've been practicing for 4 months and we have a lot to learn. You'll see us as we go live every Sunday from this point on. And then James, after this, I'm going to ask you a question about when you came to the Russell experience. But why, if you could, in just a few sentences, John, why do you think what we're going to be sharing every Sunday for the next several months, why do you think it can bring hope to humanity?
Well, for me personally, I feel as though I owe it to Doc and Leo to share this message and to share the knowledge that I have gained in life's experiences to help guide those that might be struggling a little bit. Even though I'd rather live an individual journey myself, but with my respect and love for the Russells in this message, that's why I'm involved. And Jim was mentioning about, seeking 10 other messengers of the light. So if we collectively can fulfill that formula, boy, what a success this will be.
Love that thought. Karen, why do you think that this can bring hope to the world? Because you are now reading the home study course. So while you've been familiar with the Russell works, and I believe you're a conceptual genius, I believe that from the moment that I started interacting with you, your ability to take these big concepts and bring it forward pictorially is just incredible. But why now, as part of the home study course and being a part of this project, why do you think it will bring hope in today's world?
To me, the profound message that the Universal One talks about is when you do look at the periodic table or you look at the wave, everything comes from the electromagnetic spectrum. And when you look at the wave, it comes from a beautiful prism of light, which you see in every ancient tradition. And that from that wine light becomes divided light. We are all human. We all come from the same source. We all are creatures of creation, here to create. And I think the message within Walter Russell's work is to show us that humanity and invite for us back as humanity, where so many people are trying to divide us. This is a message of oneness, and it propels us and it shows us how to find it. And in all the traditions, God is seated within. And when you really look at all the period, all the elements of the table, though they look separate in octaves, they are still one thing, just divided by pressure. And so I invite humanity to kind of look back and reframe the way we think things and realize that we only got to do one thing. We don't want to eat hamburgers all day. We want the spice, we want the flavor, we want the richness of all the creative tapestry that has been woven for us to enjoy. Walter Russell's work does that to me, and it sings to my heart.
Oh, wow. That's lovely. Thank you. So Jim and Jackie, I'll ask the two of you to speak up on why do you think this will bring hope to humanity?
I believe it is the hope for humanity. I have always believed that as man evolves, evolutionary, and continues to build a better body through the thousands of years that pass as he does it, he becomes more aware of that something within. They refer to scientifically as the dawn of consciousness. And the Russells teach very clearly and very lovingly that something within is what Christ told us, that the kingdom of heaven or the throne of God or divinity resides within everything and everybody. And that puts you in a position to manifest a constant better you. And with the message from these two messengers, and to me they were messengers from God, with that message understood, you begin to understand what it has been told or what has been given to us. What has been given for the first time in history is the ability to know that we can self-evolve and become a greater and more enlightened being from meditation and prayer within.
Okay. All right, Jackie.
Ditto.
Okay, that's fine.
It's
Okay.
next step to me, when I was disillusioned by the church, and I'm not saying everybody, well, you know what I'm trying to say, but I was disillusioned. So when I found the philosophy and the science, where the science proved the philosophy, and it just grounded me, and I think it will help people to understand what true manifestation is when it comes from within, that you go within to fulfill your own desires with the help of our Creator.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to go to Ken in just a moment, and then James, but I want to answer this a little bit for myself as well. So why do I believe that this will bring hope to humanity? Well, I want to go to Darcy's question, because Darcy was asking, does anyone have a spiritual experience? And much of the Walter Russell and Leah Russell work, it actually talks about illuminations. It talks about having access to the other side and how that's brought in. And so for me, one of the reasons is I think this can bring hope to humanity, Darcy, because when people begin to have more and more experiences of where they're asking, what is it that I'm hearing? Why can't I don't quite understand what's happening to me. I genuinely believe that the cosmogony of the Russells will be able to answer a lot of people. And I do believe that we're moving to a point where that's going to happen more and more. Now, Ken and I are going to work very hard on making things very, very applicable to everyday life. And I want to bring up one other thing, is I am in the corporate world. I travel quite a bit. I speak to a lot of leaders. And what I have begun to notice over the past 10 years was the increasing number of what I've come to call the walking dead. The number of people that I could tell were going through the motions of life, but the light had been extinguished inside. And I could tell that they weren't even searching for purpose anymore because they thought this was it. And so for me, on a practical pathway, I believe that this work can help people unleash that genius, awaken the inner genius, and they can begin to find more purpose, more fulfillment, and walk through the world with a greater understanding of themselves and others. And Ken, I believe that really ties into what you had tried to do all these years about why you think this work is so important to bring hope to humanity.
Yeah. My mic's on. Okay. Yeah. For me, as I said, I started to, I come from a rougher background. So, I was kill or be killed mentality. And then I found out I wasn't the only one. What I had learned from these works was thought, feeling, action. And what I found in my life is I was taking actions that I didn't really want to take, but I never understood the feelings that preceded the action, let alone the thought that preceded the feeling. And so, this is all about a thought life, and we create what we think you become, and what you become is because of what you're thinking. It sounds simple, but that formula starts to really resonate for me because I had a trashy mind. I can get honest and say, man, I was a fault finder. I had learned out of defense mechanisms in life. Like Kimberly, I came from the movie industry, so a lot of ego and a lot of I'm better than, grandiosity. And as a result of that, I never realized whatever you give out to this world, you're going to re-give right back to yourself. So I found fault with people before I could find assets. I found what was wrong before I could find what was right. It was almost like this pattern had developed over the course of the years where I could consider myself a fault-finding thinker. I had an expert fault finder but I was not good at finding the assets. I didn't know how to find the good things in life and anchor onto those things. I didn't see the glass half full. I saw the glass half empty. And that came from a lot of injury. And we all have injury in life. I've come to realize.
So you believe this work will help people redirect that kind of thought process then? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to relate is to check yourself if you're listening right now. How's your thoughts been today? What have you been thinking about? How you been feeling about the world you live in? Is the world you live in a good world, or is it a world full of stress? Is it a world full of strife? Is it, I can't get to that next dollar? 95% of the country lives month to month. Do the finances oppress you? Do they make you unhappy and miserable? Are you tapping into those things that enlighten you? They don't cost anything. You know what doesn't cost anything? A beautiful sunset, a walk in the woods. These are the kinds of things that the Russell Cosmogony helped me to understand, that nature was an important part. If I wanted to know God and I wanted to have a personal relationship, and that's what this is about, a personal relationship, then I needed to first get out there and to practice the omnipresence, right? And the Russells talk about omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence. And I believe for me, that's the order form in which I have evolved and developed my wonderful relationship that I have, and I keep improving on. I don't think there's a finish line in getting a relationship with my creator. And as it's been said here, within me, not without me. That's the greatest. In that I've been given everything I need to live a good life, but I got to reach out for it, take the right actions, and the right action with the right thinking, followed by the right feelings, followed by, of course, the right actions ultimately.
Okay. All right. I love that. So when we're talking about bringing hope to humanity, I'm going to ask James to weigh in, because James came to one of our first programs that we did at the museum, where John and I were teaching something called the Russell Experience. And James had been working with me on social media for years. And James, when you came in and crossed paths with the Russell work, what was the impression for you? Because you came back to one, but you came to not only one, but two different programs.
Right. The first time I came, it was interesting to me because it aligned with a lot of the other things that I had studied over the years, awareness, meditation, these kinds of things. But what made Walter Russell in particular different was he was someone who clearly took these teachings and applied it to his life. He was so prolific and talented. I mean, it was just so interesting to see that this man learned how to sculpt, and just, he was an ice skater, he was a writer, he was a philosopher, a scientist, so all of these different things. And so it was this message that mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed, and he presented that as fact. It wasn't just some words. So we've all read books from well-meaning gurus. It sounds good and it's applicable to your life, but this was an embodied example of this. So as someone who is a creator himself, it was super intriguing to me to look at this man and think, okay, there is something here that he has tapped into. And all of the great sages, all of the great teachers in history all say the same thing about genius. They don't put it on the shelf as something that's unattainable, that only a few can reach and grab and become. It's available to everyone. It's just awakening to that. So like this constant process, this iterative process of our own consciousness, and like shedding layers and becoming more and more aware through meditation and study was what really intrigued me about the Russells.
James, you're a father of 4 children. And so Hope for Humanity would be especially important because they're all young children. Why do you think some of this work can bring hope to the world?
I think people need a philosophy to live by, something that gives them hope, something that gives them power, something they can apply to their life. So I think there's a lot of really great philosophies. I think in particular for this one, there is that, what I said a minute ago, that example that you can look at and say, hey, this is someone who has done this. This is someone who has experienced that illumination. It's not just woo-woo BS that, a lot of new age thought tends to veer into. And the idea of like a lot of people, we're so inundated with everything coming at us from all different directions, media and just like the stresses of life. And so we don't take that time to sit with ourselves and It's like we're afraid our own thoughts will insult us, so we can't be alone with them, or we're scared of what the road we might go down if we are alone with our thoughts for too long. And so it's very simple. I think just even just reading the material, even though I truly don't always understand what I'm reading, but there's something that happens to my brain when I read it. Even if I walk away and I don't fully understand what I just read, it's like it's speaking to some deeper part of me that I don't need to necessarily understand it up here. I understand it on some level, and it has some benefit to my life.
That is so well said. So well said. And Karen, I wanted, if you would, to chime in, because you were listening to James and you sent me a message talking about this integration of science and spirituality.
Yeah, this is where I really love Walter Russell's work. It's the convergence of science as well as spirit. So it explains the science of living from the inside out, and it's how everything is literally, as they say in the old text, it's God's within you. And so when you look at all the periodic table of elements, it's everything that's out there is everything that's in you. Everything that's made out of everything else makes you. So all of that, water, fire, air, liquid, solids, gases, are all one and the same thing. And we breathe it. And through our breath is our expression, through the water and the memory, all these things are scientific. And he kind of navigates through. I think it was kind of fun. I'm going to go back to John Bosco, because he was the one who said, and I think, John, you should tell the story about how he had the experience. How does God said to him, how do I have to have people know me? Remember that, John, when you and I had that conversation? And he had
my memory. Go ahead. Now, are you speaking about Walter Russell?
He went through those 7 layers. He got there. How do I have to have people know me? Do you remember that? And he came back and is it science? Is it art? Is it this? And he said, science, great. I'll bring it back. I'll show you the science of God.
I'll make you the master scientist, John. That's the story she's referring to.
I'm sorry. Yes. You're talking about the words that God shared with Walter Russell in his illumination, that if man needed science to know me, I'll make you the master scientist. If man needed art to know me, I'll make you the master artisan, and so on. Yes. And so guess what? And he did.
So I think what people should understand is we're going to be able to not only explore it's the science of living, how it really truly works, as well as actually understanding the science behind it. So I like what James says. It's not a woo-woo. It's really a beautiful tapestry of work that takes you through the cosmos from the outside to the inside.
All right. So I want to capture that phrase, tapestry of work. I think that is a lovely way to say that. And the other day when I was talking to someone, they said for them, what Walter Russell's work did is it took one woo out of woo-woo. And I found that a really fun way to look at it, because, when people are trying to figure out what are we trying to do here in the world, is some people call anything that we can't explain woo-woo, but if you really dive into the work around Walter and Leo Russell, it really does explain it a lot more. So I want to ask, I'm going to start with Ken, and I want to talk about the balance of Walter and Leo. You'll notice on the screen that we also worked hard to bring balance. You'll see the male and the female here on the screen, and I'm going to ask each of you to comment about the power of balance in the work and why Leo entering his life was so profound. So I'm going to time us each. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to give us each of you to give an answer as we're here to this last 30 minutes together. So Ken, what's the power of balance? You're on mute.
I apologize. Technically working with this here. I would come back to the seesaw. As I said, literally this man can explain creation in the seesaw. So, I have to tell you, when I hear science, guys, it really, I've got almost a little bit of a taboo going. And I don't know if I'm alone in that, because I have a 7th grade education. So science wasn't something that I studied or even began. So now I want to make sure that we understand the science that's being talked about here is not science like you would think in school academic science. This is a whole new paradigm. I'm going to go back to one more thing too that I want to say. I only got 2 minutes, so I'll be quick. But the reality of it is you tell me of a paradigm, which is a theological way of life, a full spectrum way of life that you know of. I know of one, and as I mentioned it when I got sober, and that is those 12 steps, and those are for alcoholics or drug addicts. Now, regular people, there has been theologians that have studied the Bible for thousands of years and yet to pull out of it a theological way of life. And what I mean by that is a theological way of life is my head's in the gutter. How do I get it out? I'm worried about everything all the time. Do you run into this? And what do you do when you find yourself trapped in your own mind with your own oppressive thinking? My problem was a thinking problem. I had a thinking problem. And until I got to this message, it helped me to realize that thinking was all about balance, which we go to now. And the balance of thinking is that if I don't feel good, then I've got a thought problem. If I physically don't feel good, then I've got to take a physical action. But if inside I'm not feeling well, it's not a physical action that's going to restore me to balance. It's going to be a mental one. And therefore guidance becomes so important. That's what this to me, this podcast is all about, is getting that guidance that a lot of us didn't get. When you look at John and Jim and you see the legacy that they have of actually spending time with Leah Russell, which would, this woman was alive while I was alive. So,
Let's talk about
the year that I was born. But to me, balance, learning the male-female balance is the pistons of life. And I'll end on this. The seesaw, if you think about it, right? It's kind of like what Karen was talking about. The elements of matter are always doing this. We're always doing this. And God is the fulcrum that the seesaw works on. And once you understand the fulcrum, then you kind of stay centered, right? Instead of getting one way or the other.
So James, I'm going to need you to help me get a clock to help some folks as we move forward for the next year, so that we're all really good here. So that was 2.5 minutes. So I'm going to be fair and give John 2.5 minutes. John, why is the issue of balance important, and why is it important for people who are listening in the next few months to understand that a male-female balance is critical to understanding the greater story of the world?
Right. So what is balance? Well, balance is neutral. Balance means there's no residue. So whether you're in a relationship, whether you're in a working environment or a social environment, whatever. So balance comes from like thinking. Like attracts like. For example, if you were to go to a professional sporting event, basketball, baseball, whatever it is, and you look at the home crowd, and it's scientific evidence that, especially like in the NFL, for example, that there is a 10% advantage for the home team because they're playing in front of a crowd that is doing nothing but rooting for them. So it's a collective mind thought universe, and it's a powerful thing. So balance is simply wherever you want to apply it, wherever you want to apply it in your life. Okay. So balance is the lack of residue. So again, whether it's in human relations, male, female, right? And I said this the other day on a broadcast. You can gauge in your relationships with people is the number of things that you have in common, your conversation. Is it argumentative? Do you get loud with people, or are the arguments explosive in nature, and so on, and the frequency of them? And so that's a nice gauge for you to find out how far you are removed from balance or how close you are to be in balance. So that would be my
I love that.
Take on balance.
That was 1 minute 55, John. So here you go. So I'm going to Karen next. And so Jim and Jackie, be thinking about it. You all get a little longer because there's two of you over there. But Karen, why is the notion of balance within the work important as we're doing this particular podcast?
I think when we look at balance, I'm laughing at some of the things. the fulcrum is the center point. I think people should know that. So that's the middle point. And even when you used to go to the churches, there's always the church that has the middle door and the two sides. It's the yin and the yang, the positive, the negative, the hot and the cold. So you need both to create things. So that's the balance of the male and the female. You need that. And so I think going back to what John Bonzo said, is like, depending on how far apart you are, the pendulum swings, and it swings this way and then it swings that way. And depending on how it swings, as you get to the center, there's no, I'm going to say charge on your emotion. You know, when you get somebody comes into your world and it charges you, you think, I need to work on that one, because that's something within me that I need to work on. So again, the pendulum of male, female, positive and negative. The heart more is of the women and the warriors more of the man, but you need both just to make a family and to make it familiar. So that's just my thought.
Did you want to add something?
Nope,
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, that was a minute 40. All right, well done. So, all right, Jackie and Jim, we're coming to you. Why is it so important to have balance and be thinking about that as we go forward on this podcast?
Balance for me is a peace of mind. When you have balanced thinking, or even when you know inside yourself you have to balance something in order to find that peace within yourself, then you go ahead and take action to create that balance, whatever it is. And, you know, we all get charged. And I think it's a matter of recognizing when you're centered within yourself, you can recognize what you need to do in order to find that equilibrium between the two actions.
I love that. And Jim?
We'll discover when you start reading the course that it's literally titled A Universal Law, Natural Science, and Living Philosophies. The universal law is the God part. And that one word that they use for that is balance, fulcrum, stillness. God is that point of stillness within all motion. Emotion is the science versus the living philosophy. So when we express in thought and action through desire, we either express that in a balanced way, giving equally out for that which we receive back. That's the one lesson of life. And that's what they teach us in this course. But beyond teaching it, they give you the scientific evidence and the missing elements from the Mendeleev chart. They give you those so that you know exactly how and why this universal law of balance can be applied in your life and in the life of all individuals. And when we learn to act and think in a balanced and loving manner, we create a balanced and loving civilization. When we break that law, it breaks us. And that's why you've seen man build civilization after civilization after civilization. And then we destroy it through living in imbalanced thinking and for not loving and supporting our fellow man.
Wow. So I want to bring up to everybody who's watching and anybody in the future. So what we're living in is an unbalanced world. Is that fair enough to say to everybody? We are living in an unbalanced world where there are far more people taking than giving, where we have people who get lost in the greed and the fear and the materialism and where people will seek outside of themselves and not inside of themselves. And so it doesn't take much to look through the world and see that we are woefully out of balance. Our organizations, our companies, our governments are all out of balance. John?
What comes to mind when you mentioned that, Kimberly, was from the book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, when Dr. Russell explains what it means to live a life triumphant. And boy, if that could be the template for which we all live by. And to sum it up for our audience, it's where you give more to the world than you take from it. And if you can do that in a balanced manner, just like Mr. Porter said, what a wonderful world we could build and we all could exist in.
I love that. So let's fast forward. So we're going to use this particular live video as a documentation because all podcasts get better over time. In the past 4 months, I wanted first, let's ask this. What was a funny moment or two or a stressful moment or two as we practiced over the past 4 months, as we've learned to go in this path together? So for example, for me, all the technical things that we tried whether it was in person, on Zoom, in Restream, the technical glitches were kind of a challenge. What were some of the challenges or memorable moments for the rest of you as we prepped? Has it been learning how to speak these complex subjects in a short amount of time, making it personable, getting over a fear on camera? I'm just curious from each of you. You each could give me just a memorable moment or challenge as we prepped for this.
I'll speak up.
Okay, John?
Well, as we got going and we were moving along with this, I thought to myself, man, I hope Ken doesn't get so long-winded that the rest of us don't get a chance to say anything. But he's been so good, and he's been so good tonight, and I'm so proud of him. So that was one of my concerns.
All right, so
Love you, brother.
Ken will come off mute and respond to that and offer his challenge.
Oh, well, is there a mirror I can reflect back to Mr. Bonzo and say to him? But no, my thing has been, and it still is. When I came to the museum a year ago, I said that we are talking so much about science, and I don't feel that we're talking enough about the light and love. So that's been my aspiration, and I'm always into application. How do I apply this right now in my life to bring this change about, as opposed to what's it going to take, 5 years, 10 years? Remember this starts now. And I realized in my own divine eternal mind that my Heavenly Father knows exactly where I'm at and would never ask more of me than I'm capable, but will give me everything I ever asked for or I'm ever willing to work for. So that to me has been the only challenge. Is this can seem complex, but it really is quite simple.
Love that. Karen?
I don't know if it's been a challenge. It's been more of an inspiration as I've gone through the work doing the study course. I think it speaks to what Ken's talking about. It brings you closer to the heart. So, I mean, doing the magazine for 13 years, it's a lot of science. And doing the study course brings you closer to the heart. So that's been really fun for me, and actually doing the visuals that I've been working on.
Talk about that balance. I agree with you. Jim and Jackie, what has been your biggest challenges? Other than
I love that female honesty. I have to just say something to Karen right now. I don't think a guy could say what she just said. That was such great humility and such a great message. So thank you, because that to me just showed how important the female balance is. And that was a great demonstration of the kindness of female energy. It's just so beautiful.
It's truth. It's the truth.
All right, Jim and Jackie, other than trying to make your cameras and your microphones work, what's been, look at these guys trying to learn how to send some love. Oh, I love it. So Jim and Jackie, what's been the biggest challenge or just memorable moment?
The biggest challenge for me is to be online. Because of my age, and before all this technology started, we would go to a class and we would interact with the people. And like, I don't know who we're talking to. There's no interaction, even though there's questions, there's still not that person-to-person contact. And I personally miss that kind of connection. It's being present. And I just this is something I have to get used to, because we can't all be in one place other than here.
So I want to give you some assurance, Jackie. So Jeff in our chat box has just said that this is a fast-moving panel. It's interesting. So just know you're not alone in the world. There are some people commenting, and so that's a really good thing. Jim, I'm just curious, what was your biggest challenge or memorable moment?
For me, it's coming together as a group of people, even though we're all students of the Russell. Most of us have not spent many years together. John and Jackie and I would be the exception, but the others, we've not known each other very long. So it's like putting a band together. Everybody comes with their background, their knowledge, and their talents, but getting them to all work in harmony and seeing the beauty and the light in each other takes time and effort. And we've had our time and effort doing it. But what happens is we become a small microcosm of what humanity can do for itself when it comes together in a common goal and a common purpose and love to share something that inspires them. And that's how we're doing our little part to change the world, and that's how the world will ultimately change itself.
Okay, I love that. So I'm going to answer, we're going to tell you Jeff's question in just a moment. But before we do, I want to mention some of the other challenges, because I want people going on this journey with us to understand that we are Russell students, and that we actually had to learn, how do we make our answers shorter? How do we have more banter? How do we get the lighting right, the videos right? How do we answer questions that they're big ideas to make them simple? So there's been a lot of, we've had a lot of practice over the past 4 months. And so as we get ready on June 2nd to launch with Unit 1, you'll see in the link below that you can have access to the home study course, and even the Man Who Tapped. Even if you don't have access to it yet, we're going to be taking you on the journey and showing you the course as we go along. We encourage everyone to get a copy as soon as you're able to. But we actually had to learn a lot of these things. James had to train us. So it's been quite a journey of love. And so our question in the chat box for everybody is, and I'd like to ask you all your greatest takeaway. He said, what was the greatest takeaway from the course? I'll begin with this, and it is the role of how women played such an important role in balancing what happens in humanity. And it was one of the first works that I saw in spirituality that had a balance of male, female, and that was incredibly comforting and divinely inspiring to me. John?
The home study course is, for the first time in the course of human history, science and religion became a marriage. And it's a perfect marriage. And so that is my greatest takeaway, because I was a science person in school, and I was always a B+ student, because there was never anything in the sciences that was absolute. There was always exceptions to this, exceptions to that. But when you get into the home study course and you see the science of the cosmos that the Russells present, boy, you're going to have a mind awakening.
Love that. Jim and Jackie, let's go to you, and then I'm going to go to Ken, and then to Karen. Your greatest takeaway from the course?
Individual excellence. Everything that I studied throughout my life, or was brought to me, was focused outside of self. And often the things that you would hear is, that won't work, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that can break a spirit. And many spirits throughout history and today are being broken by you can't do it. What the Russell material does is it empowers you to build a one-on-one personal relationship with the divine within all things. And as you do that, you begin to see that divine in yourself and within all things, and most importantly, within other people. And that mindset becomes part of your thinking, and you see the beauty and the idea of creation from creator, and what we are in the process of manifesting here on earth and throughout the universe. And that's creator's law. Balance.
Well said. Jackie, your one greatest takeaway?
Is that there is no death. And it confirms an experience I had when I was 18, before I even knew about the Russells, that I left my body. I don't know what happened. It was in surgery. And I just realized I was alive. I was in total consciousness and always alive. So when I came across the Russells, that confirmed that for me. I was hooked. That meant a lot to me, and I continued to study work.
Thank you. Karen, what's your one biggest takeaway?
Well, I have to make a confession. I haven't gotten all the way through it. In fact, I have to see. So what I see for my biggest takeaway so far, what I've been doing, I love that it sort of cements my experience, like Jackie says, where I get downloads all the time. How everybody has a different way of tapping in, and I get spoken to, I get dreams, I get, the marching orders in the morning. So for me, it's the way of tapping in and knowing that I am tapped in, and I'm grateful for that. And yeah, that I live my life that way.
Okay. And Ken, what was your one greatest takeaway?
Well, I hate to say it, but I'm going to belabor this. No, I'm just kidding. I got two personally. One, which is the ultimate, is love. I really learned what love meant because it's so broken down in such a beautiful way. And we hear it, I heard it many times in my life that love is giving and not getting, but it didn't make a lot of sense because I can't love every single thing I do. Like I had horses for a long time, so cleaning the horse stall was not my favorite thing to do, but I could learn to put love into it, and that was the true art. It's not about loving every single thing I do, but what it is about is putting love, my love, into whatever I'm doing, whether I'm sweeping the floor or whether I'm cleaning the stalls or I'm driving my nice car or I'm having great success in business. I still put love into it no matter what. And that I was taught through this course what love really is. And it really means to just keep giving love. And I found out for me that I'm re-given by creation. I'm not looking for love to be re-given by an individual. It comes from creation, and it comes in such a manner, it's overwhelming at times. I mean, I could cry telling you that this is a guy that love was a very distant thing that I didn't know I would get in touch with. And I have so much love in my life today. I really do. I love. I'm a goofball. I love. I do. I love. I got a lot of love.
Yes, you do. And I have certainly a firsthand testimony of that. And so I want to address one of the comments. So Jeff says, I have one of his books, Walter Russell, and honestly, the science is beyond me, perhaps not the right starting point. And Jeff, we would agree. So people come onto the Russell work on different places. That's part of why we started this. And I'm going to come to your second question in just a minute. So this home study course balances love and science and the philosophy and science. And so that's what we want to show you. So please come on the journey with us so that we can show you the balance of that. And Jeff brings up a question that we have been asked before. Serious question. Is this similar to Scientology? So John, I'm going to go to you to answer this question, please, because that's where I think people get confused about what it is that we're here for.
You know what? Scientology, I still haven't figured out what it is that they do. I occasionally go on TV to their channel, and all I ever see are just advertisements. And it seems like they do a lot of recruiting for volunteers. But other than that, I don't ever see anything materialistically that you can lock onto or you can relate to. So the University of Science and Philosophy and the home study course is nothing like Scientology. There may be a couple parallel things that you could identify with, but no, it is not anything like Scientology.
Thank you, John. You know, I want to bring up to everybody who has crossed our paths. I'd like you to take a look at this quote. I'm going to ask for quote number 1. It talks about how you are here for a reason. And I want to drive this home for everybody, because anybody who crosses our path and comes across this podcast, there's a reason. And so wherever belief system that we've ever run across, we're all being asked to lay down any assumptions or any preconceived notions, beliefs that we had about things. So we invite you to come here with a clean slate. Let it sink in more with your heart necessarily than with your head, and join us. Come to these Sunday sessions. Enjoy the love that we're pouring into this, because that's what we are, is each one of us are pouring into this with love, and then see how it speaks to you. This is what I know, is that there is no accident. And Jim, I'm going to ask you to comment on this. There's no accident about when we actually cross paths with the Russell work, is there? No.
It's the old one. The student is ready, the teacher appears. For me, I was ready in my thinking for many years before it came into my life. The Russell material came into my life. And the reason it came into my life when it did, before that, I was so busy being the teenager and the young person that I was, and dealing with issues within my own family life that I would not have grasped it or been ready for. But when I was ready, it was there. And it's brought so many people into my life. Sharing this with other people, so many people into my life. And that one of the things that we often hear back from new students is I don't have anybody to talk about what I feel inside. The Russell material is someone to read about what you feel inside. And it gives you the answers why you are seeking this knowledge that doesn't seem to be outside of yourself.
Yes.
And it will awaken much for you.
Well, and I wanted to bring up this quote. Thank you so much, Jim, because this actually comes out of the book that Leah Russell wrote. And she said, since our teachings are based solely upon natural law, they are not in variance with any religious beliefs and are therefore universally acceptable. We have people from all races, nationalities, and creeds in our student body. So if we'll stop with the quotes for a minute, as we're wrapping up here, because our goal was to try to keep this around 90 minutes, is that part of what I found so beautiful about the Russell work was that it wasn't busy calling out other people so much being wrong, that it was really a tapestry. I love that word that Karen said earlier, a tapestry that was weaving together so many belief systems. And if we all can come together on the idea of love and light, the rest of it is semantics. Any final words?
I'd like to just say something, Jeff. In the way that this is structured, the science really doesn't come in until after the 6th unit. So the beginning is all about love, light, philosophy, as Karen was saying, which it really opens up that door to make science palatable. And you start to learn the language of the vocabulary, which again makes it palatable.
And how to
Don't let
confuse
science steer you away.
Karen, and then I'll come to Jim.
I think when you do start reading, like I've just started reading, he does bring in Jesus's work, but he also brings in Krishna's work. He really bridges in the East and the West. And when you actually look at the graphics and the way that I play with them, you will see the overlapping of the different cultures in a lot of the science. And it really invites everybody to come back into their heart. I agree with what Ken says, and to really honor their own traditions in a way, but it'll bring it back to you. The things that are the truth within them will shine.
Yep.
I love that. Any final burning comment before we say goodbye? Yes, John.
What came to me as we're departing, and a comment that I can share with everyone is a wonderful quote from Leo. And what these teachings will give you is this: it will teach you how to live a purposeful life instead of a purposeless life. And once you realize that you are in control of everything around you, then now you can kind of tighten that seatbelt and get on with life and have a purpose, a true purpose in what you're doing.
I can't say it any better than that. So we want to say a gracious thank you. We want to celebrate our first live broadcast. We'll continue to get better and have more ideas and expand. And it is our goal that we will magnetize at least 100 new students a month. Because I know for me, I wish to goodness I had learned of this work 10, 20 years ago. So I want to say a gracious thank you to everyone on our panel. And join us next Sunday, also at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And please be sure to check out the link below so you can go through and get a copy of your own home study course. So please, Jeff, absolutely, you can share this. We'll be continuing to do broadcasts every week. Don't be surprised if you see some clips from other broadcasts that we've done. The main thing is we want to get the word out. So we're not going to say goodbye. We're going to say until next Sunday.